Which NFL teams are the most interesting, compelling teams entering NFL free agency? What's going on, BLV football fans? It's Mitch here, back with another NFL offseason video. In this video, the 10 most compelling NFL teams entering free agency, including the teams that I believe will win free agency this year. Now, if you don't want to be spoiled on who's going to make a big splash in March, then don't watch this video. But if you want to know who's going to be spending that cash, like Big Al in the super chat, then stay tuned. Gronk, spike the like button. Don't forget to let me know in the comment section whether you're here live or you're here after the fact. Let me know who you think will win NFL free agency. We're going to go through the 10 candidates that I feel are the most compelling teams and the teams to watch this free agency, and I'll go through the reasons why I believe those teams are so interesting, at least to me personally. And these teams all have the ability to make noise, mostly in a positive fashion, but some also in a negative fashion. Let me know how you're doing. Let me know how you're feeling. We're here live. I hope you guys enjoy the live streams. I wanted to figure a way to continue to do these live streams for you guys. So I'm trying to do more and more content live. If you do enjoy the lives, make sure to Gronk spike the like button and let me know in the chat if you enjoy the lives. All right. So before we get started with the list, the first thing I want to do, which I'm going to do more frequently here in this video, is I'm going to share my screen and I'm going to show you guys the teams, if you're not aware, that have the most cap space entering NFL free agency, because by knowing and understanding the teams that have the most cap space, we can understand who's more likely to spend money, who's more likely to gain assets, add players, sign players, and make big moves. So let's take a look at the teams, first of all, who have the most money entering NFL free agency. So we have the Commanders, who are first, with $73 million. This is according to overthecap.com. Second, we have the Patriots at $69 million. The Bears at $66 million. The Titans at $65. The Bengals, the Colts, the Texans, the Lions, surprisingly, the Cardinals, the Raiders, and the Rams. Those are the top teams that have the most cap space in the NFL. Now, on the other side of that, the teams that have the least amount of cap space entering free agency. The Saints, as always. The Buffalo Bills, that's an interesting one to take note of. The Dolphins, that's also an interesting one to take note of. The Chargers, a team with a new head coach at negative $35 million. They're in the red right there. The Broncos, who will be looking for a quarterback. The Raiders, who will be looking for a quarterback. The Browns, who have a bad quarterback, the 49ers, the Steelers, the Packers, and the Seahawks. So, taking note of that, we can now understand and narrow down our list. Obviously, these teams at the bottom here are probably not going to be competing for the most interesting and compelling free agency period. These teams are more likely to spend a lot of money, but that doesn't necessarily mean they're going to win free agency. So, let's go through the teams that I believe are going to be winners of free agency and the ones that you must watch. So let's begin with the first team. And that first team is the Washington Commanders. Now, I want to start with the Commanders because they have the most cap space entering free agency. And I would argue that on paper, they have maybe the worst roster in the NFL entering free agency. Funny enough, the Discord was actually discussing this, and if you're not in the Discord, links in the description if you want to join the community there of NFL fans and BLV viewers. But they were discussing how the Commanders, some people think they'll make the playoffs. Some people think they're terrible. And there's nowhere in between, apparently. But the Washington Commanders have needs just about everywhere on their roster. You look at their needs. And obviously, first of all, they're probably going to pick a quarterback at number 2 overall in the draft. So they're not going to be looking to free agency to fulfill that quarterback need. Offensively, though, they definitely need to spend on offensive line. There's quite a few tackles in free agency. There's some guards in free agency that they can take a look at. They have 2 offensive linemen that are free agents that started last year. And defensively, obviously, we remember they traded Montez Sweat. They traded Chase Young. Those guys have basically allowed for a major void at the edge position. So they're going to need pass rushers. And knowing Dan Quinn, who's the new head coach, he's going to want pass rushers. Remember, this guy just spent, 3 years coaching Micah Parsons and DeMarcus Lawrence. He's not going to have a defense without edge rushers. They went and fulfilled some of their needs in the secondary in the draft last year. But Cameron Curl, arguably their best player in their secondary, and arguably their second best player in their secondary, Kendall Fuller, are both free agents. So they're going to need to look at secondary. And then you also have a couple linebackers. So again, we're going to share our screen. We're going to get more active here. Looking at Washington's depth chart. Washington, in terms of, you just look at this. So Curtis Samuel, wide receiver, free agent. I don't think they're going to spend big money on a wide receiver because they have Dotson, they have McLaurin. I think those are 2 guys that they really like. I think Dotson has the potential to be a borderline number 1, but he's a strong number 2 entering the future. McLaurin is their number 1. Brown, he's spotty. I think they could maybe look at a number 3 in the draft. I think they're going to spend on their offensive line right there. As I said, Charles and Larson are both free agents. And then you've got the defense where the linebacker position, Cody Barton is a free agent. He's not very good anyways. Hudson's a free agent. So they're going to look at edge, I think. If we're talking about spending on edge, this is the team to look at. So when you're doing your free agency predictions or projecting their roster for next year, this team's going to be looking for an edge. I think they're going to be looking for a corner. I think they could be looking to bring back Cameron Curl in free agency at safety. So the Commanders do have the 2nd overall pick. They do have the most cap space in NFL free agency right now as of, what's the date? February 22nd. So they need a complete overhaul, as Big Al is saying in the chat. Let's pop that up on the broadcast here. And of course, it doesn't let me do it at the same time. Oh, there we go. So yeah, Big Al is right. So I believe that this team is going to be going after edge first and foremost, maybe linebacker as well. But the Commanders are definitely a team to watch. They could dictate free agency with all the money they have, and I specifically expect them to attack defense. Dan Quinn is a defensive coach. I expect them to attack offensive line to protect their young rookie quarterback. I don't expect them to spend a lot of money on offense other than just offensive line positions, and then defense, edge, corner, linebacker, as we discussed. So the Commanders are the first team to talk about. Then second, we've got to talk about the Atlanta Falcons. The Atlanta Falcons are interesting to me, not because they have a ton of needs or they don't really have like a ton of cap space either. They're plus 25 million. They're not like one of the absolute top teams in terms of cap space. We just talked about the Commanders, who 73 million in cap space. The Falcons have 25 million in cap space. But what makes them so interesting to me and potential winners of free agency is the fact that they need a quarterback and they're desperate for a quarterback. So my question is, who are they going to go after? Are they going to go after Kirk Cousins and try to spend a lot of money on that position and try to fulfill that need with a veteran who can come in and win right away? Are they going to try to make a trade for somebody like Justin Fields or maybe Russell Wilson? That could be maybe a stopgap or a short-term solution at the position. Fields maybe has more potential than a Russell Wilson, but you understand what I'm saying. They could also be looking at adding a big-time edge rusher, just as Washington is. This is a team that had a pretty solid defense, but if they had one deficiency on their defense and you had to just pick one, it would probably be the inability to just get to the quarterback, rushing the quarterback with 4. Having to do a lot of stunts, a lot of dynamic, creative looks up front, a lot of simulated looks, a lot of simulated pressures, bringing people from all angles. I'm sure that Raheem Morris coming in there, somebody that, yes, worked with Aaron Donald and got the most out of a limited edge position in LA this past season, but I'm sure he'd love to have pass rushers. He is a defensive guy first, just as Dan Quinn is, so I wouldn't be shocked if they went out there and spent on an edge rusher. So Bud Dupree is currently a free agent for them. Calais Campbell on the inside, the veteran, is also a free agent. I'm not sure if he's even coming back this year. I don't even know. I assume he is, but I'm not exactly sure. He is really old, though. Strong safety maybe could be another position that they look at. But overall, and then corner, you never know about that one as well. But the Atlanta Falcons are just compelling to me because they will be heavy in the quarterback market. They will be looking to spend on quarterback. They will be looking to set the quarterback market this offseason, and that is how teams are going to follow them. And then from there, I could also see them being one of the top spenders on the pass rusher department as well, and market as well. So the Atlanta Falcons are the second team. Next up, we've got the Chicago Bears. The Chicago Bears are next up, and I like the Chicago Bears. I think they're going to potentially win free agency because they're in a really good position and they're in a really good window to win free agency. First of all, it looks like they're going to be trading Justin Fields for a second round-ish type of pick, maybe a third round pick. So they're going to get assets for the draft, but we're not really talking about the draft. We're talking about free agency. They're going to be picking Caleb Williams or whichever quarterback they like the most, probably Caleb Williams, right? The offensive line could still use a couple pieces, but I don't think there is a drastic need on the offensive line other than maybe center. So maybe they look to sign a center, right? Wide receiver, they have their number 1 receiver, but it would be really nice to bring in a number 2 receiver for Caleb Williams, right? Or that first quarterback that you take. Spend money on wide receiver. Put playmakers around your young quarterback in this rookie contract window and try to have a really potent offense right away and give as much help to that young quarterback to help him succeed as possible. There's going to be a new offensive coordinator, a new system, all that stuff. Running back, you're fine with Herbert, Roschon Johnson. That's fine enough. Tight end, Cole Kmet is pretty good. So you're not really worried about those positions. It's more so on offense, number 2 receiver, which there's plenty of receivers in free agency that they could take a look at. There's also the center or just interior offensive line that they could also maybe be looking at. And then defensively is really where I think they're going to spend some money. So just looking at their depth chart once again, pulling that up, I think, this defensive line, you've got 2 free agents, Justin Jones and Yannick Ngakoue, who were starters last season. I believe that they're probably going to let at least one of these guys walk. I could see them maybe re-signing Yannick Ngakoue, but I think they're going to look to upgrade this defensive front, and it's because Matt Eberflus, dating back to his days coaching the Colts defense, has always been about defensive front. Get pass rush, get pressure, be able to stop the run with your front. And I look at this defense and I say, if they get another piece or 2 on this defensive line, they could be one of the best defensive front 7s in the NFL, right? They have Montez Sweat. Andrew Billings is a good role player. I like DeMarcus Walker quite a bit as a role player. But if you could get one more stud here on the inside or even the outside, you're talking about a pretty awesome defensive front there with Tremaine Edmonds and Big Al's boy TJ Edwards at the linebacker position. That's a really potent duo on the inside. And then your secondary is pretty young, but they're probably going to try to sign Jalen Johnson, whether that's to a franchise tag or that's to a long-term deal. I expect him to be back in Chicago. But either way, I expect Chicago to hit a home run this free agency because they have a ton of cap space. As we already stated, they have the third most cap space. They know where they're getting their quarterback from. It's the draft. They know they're going to be getting a draft pick and compensation for Justin Fields. So they're going to build their depth and build the strength of their roster through the draft, but they're also going to be able to maybe hit a couple big ticket items in free agency. So look out for the Bears. This team could really have a very nice free agency, all right? Next up, who's next? We got the Detroit Lions, just as Arthur enters the chat. Guys, if you haven't already, make sure you Gronk spike the like button. Very important to Gronk spike that like button so more people see this video, so that the algorithm does its magic, so people can actually get some long-form NFL content. I know that it's not for everybody, but the people that enjoy it. So let those people find it. Gronk spike the like button. Also, if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel. Arthur says, why are the Lions a surprise to have that much cap room when we've nailed the draft for 3 years, but the Bengals are not? Why are the Lions a surprise, but the Bengals are not? Did I even bring the Bengals up? I don't exactly know where you're getting the Bengals from. We might be talking about the Bengals in this video. The Lions are surprising. I just said it. I don't know. It was just something I said. Don't take it too seriously. It's just because they made the NFC Championship. I think that's why I said it, to be honest. Because they're a really good team. But yeah, I mean, you're right about the Bengals. They have 59 million cap space. That's what? First, second, third, fourth, fifth in the NFL. So the Bengals have the fifth most space. The Lions have the eighth most space in the league right now as of February 22nd. I just said it because I said it. I don't have any reason behind it. I just said it because they were the NFC Championship. But you're right. The Bengals also pretty interesting. But the Bengals make sense because the Bengals have T. Higgins, who's a free agent. They have Jonah Williams, who's a free agent. The Lions, taking a look at, this is a good transition to their depth chart, I would say. The Lions don't really have any big ticket items that are free agents, which is maybe the difference here. Jonah Jackson is a really good player, but he wasn't making a ton of money before. Graham Glasgow, they signed to a 1-year contract last free agency. And I guess Vitae was making a decent chunk of change, which was a bit disappointing for his contract. But overall, I mean, there is no T. Higgins here, and there is no Jonah Williams here. There's no, big-time names. I would say Jonah Jackson is a better player than a Jonah Williams, but he's not thought of that way because one was a first-round pick and one was the third-round pick. So, looking at the Lions, I think they're potentially a really big winner, and the reason I say that is this is already a team that made the NFC Championship game, and they're going to have the opportunity with $50 million in cap space to spend on some really marquee players because they've already gone through the process of building a young team. So now they're in the process and they're in the window of adding legitimate veteran talent, right? They tried to do that a little bit last offseason, bringing in guys like Cam Sutton, bringing in CJ Gardner-Johnson, bringing in, a few different guys. But overall, this is a team that they could add, let's say, an edge rusher. They could add a corner, L'Jarius Sneed or a Jalen Johnson. They could go out there and add a wide receiver like Mike Evans. And they can afford it, and it would be a huge addition to their team. That is why they should be winners. And when you're really thinking about winning free agency, it's also about where are you at in your timeline to compete and contending for Super Bowls. And to me, the teams that often are the real winners are those teams that are rather picking up some underrated free agents and undervalued guys that really boom for their team, or they're teams that just add one or two big items to their team to push them over the top. And that's what the Lions could really be this year. Because honestly, I thought the Lions would make the playoffs last year. I didn't think they would go to the NFC Championship. I didn't think they were the second best team in the NFC for a majority of the regular season. I think Dallas was looked at that way for a majority of the season. And even Dallas beat Detroit, although it was controversial. But Detroit was able to win those playoff games, get to the NFC Championship. That was icing on the cake. This was really the year that I thought all along the Lions would be the team to make a push. So now they enter perfectly on schedule and really ahead of schedule, or like, I guess, higher in the ranking than people would have thought. So now you kind of, okay, so you hit huge on Sam Laporta at tight end. You don't need a tight end. You hit huge on Jahmyr Gibbs. You have a difference-making running back. You don't need a running back. Amon-Ra has been a very good receiver. So you don't really need a number one receiver, but hey, we could maybe use a complementary option. Jameson Williams hopefully will grow, but do we want to count on him to really be a go-to guy in the playoffs next year? We'd like him to be that. He was a first-round pick. I was very high on him. Many analysts were very high on him, but do we want to count on him to be that? I don't know, right? So, like, maybe they could go out there and get, like, Calvin Ridley, or I'm just throwing out names, but get, like, a really nice number two option. Josh Reynolds is more of a number three in my mind, and even in some ways that showed up in the NFC Championship with a couple drops, but I like him. I think they should re-sign him if they can. He might be a little expensive, though, compared to what he really is bringing in terms of value, just because he was so good last year from a productivity standpoint. They should re-sign Jonah Jackson, though. At the right guard position, they could probably get away with drafting somebody, a second-round pick, somebody like that, and making him the starter, or getting like a Graham Glasgow, making him the starter full-time at right guard, going cheap at right guard, maybe pairing a rookie with a veteran free agent and re-signing Jonah Jackson. I'd love for them to get another pass rusher, and I'd love for them to get a corner. If we're really talking about them winning free agency this year, I think the Detroit Lions, it's going to come down to, did they get a corner, a number one corner, and did they get another pass rusher or another receiver? And those are the things I'd really be looking at. High value positions with good, legit options that can complement the stars that they already have. So that's the great thing about free agency. Typically, you do not want to be the team that goes into free agency and is trying to find your superstar players in free agency. It's very hard to do that. Like Chris Jones is one of those guys this year, but it's very rare that you can find those type of players. You really want to be finding the complementary player to your star player. So can you find that at edge with Aiden Hutchinson? Can you find that at corner? Or I guess, L'Jarius Sneed is one of the 5 best corners in football. If you could get him, that's big. There's a couple safeties like that, but they're already good enough at safety. So the Lions, just look out for them, because they're really going to be pressing hard, I think, to spend and to get this Super Bowl, or to at least get there within the next couple years. And they can do that by spending big in free agency, hitting on some of these free agents, and continuing to do their work in the draft. The work should really be icing on the cake in the draft this year, while it was kind of the foundation last year, in my opinion. The next team is the Cincinnati Bengals. So funny enough, we just talked about Cincinnati in terms of the comparison between them and Detroit. And the reason I think they're also a potential winner of free agency, or at least not a winner, but like one of the most interesting teams, like a team that can dictate free agency. They have the 5th most cap space at $59 million, nearly $60 million. But we have to keep in mind that although I don't know how much this will really impact their ability to spend this year, but Jamar Chase is going to be getting an absolutely glorious contract. So just keep that in mind. But one thing I love about the Bengals right now is that their defense is really set up pretty much. In terms of all the starters are pretty much coming back from last year. The only one that they might lose is DJ Reader. Other than DJ Reader, Trey Hendrickson is going to be back. BJ Hill's going to be back. Sam Hubbard's going to be back. Logan Wilson and Jermaine Pratt are going to be back. Cam Taylor-Britt, who I loved last year, is going to be back. Dax Hill in another year is going to be back. DJ Turner, who I liked as a second-round pick, he's going to be in his second year. Mike Hilton's going to be back. So all these guys are going to be back. Even guys like Nick Scott, Jordan Battle, who played a lot of snaps, Miles Murphy, or first-round pick from last year. So when you're looking at the Bengals, that is a way to pick out a winner of free agency. Do they already have a solid foundation, and can they add to that foundation and make one side of the ball significantly better? Now, where they do have free agents is on offense. T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd at wide receiver, Jonah Williams, and multiple tight ends, Tanner Hudson and Drew Sample, while neither are really big-time playmakers, but both, played some snaps for them. But I think the Bengals are probably going to look to sign T. Higgins if they can. I think they're probably going to let Tyler Boyd walk. I think they're going to, I'm not sure what they're going to do at right tackle. They might draft a right tackle, but they probably would be wise to spend some money on, let's say, like a Trent Brown or like somebody like that, where maybe there's a high upside with that guy for like a 1 or 2 year contract. And maybe you hit a home run with that tackle, but maybe you could pair him with a rookie just in case. You know what I mean? But in the Bengals case and the Lions case, I like being able to pair like veterans and rookies up together, because you want to be in the Super Bowl window and you want to be able to transition long term, but you also want to have guys ready to play right now as well. So you kind of got to walk that fine line. Cincinnati is a Super Bowl contender, just as Detroit is next year. So looking at the depth chart, just to further understand what I'm talking about here, look at the orange on Cincinnati's defense, right? They have one guy that's really crucial. Other than that, I mean, Chidobe Awuzie, I guess, is pretty big, but he's been hurt a little bit the last couple of years. So Cam Taylor-Britt, DJ Turner, Mike Hilton are 3 good enough corners. Now, they could bring in another corner. They have enough money to spend there. I'd really like them to add a safety, a game-changing safety. They lost Jesse Bates last offseason. That was a huge loss for them. I'd also like them to re-sign DJ Reader if they can, because he's been crucial to their run defense over the last couple of years. Otherwise, I think they're solid on defense. Their defensive coordinator is good. Miles Murphy will develop. Their pass rush is solid. They've got really good linebackers. And otherwise, they're pretty good. They're good enough. Offensively, though, they need to make sure they keep T. Higgins. I think they'll probably draft another receiver and then just continue to build the offensive line. Find a right tackle and maybe find an upgrade at left guard. Those are the areas that I think the Bengals could really upgrade. So if we're sitting here after free agency and we're saying T. Higgins is back on the Bengals, DJ Reader is back on the Bengals, or they signed a D tackle of the same value or a better player, then I'd be happy with that. And they found a safety and or cornerback, I'd be saying the Bengals won free agency. They had a great free agency period. So the Bengals are definitely going to be one to mess with next year, because I think they're set up to be a winner of free agency. The next team is the Houston Texans. Another team that could really be on the rise is the Houston Texans. The Houston Texans have the 7th most cap space right now entering NFL free agency. And why they are so crucial in terms of teams that will dictate free agency and potential winners of free agency, they don't have a first-round pick. And they're a team that must spend now. CJ Stroud is an absolute stud. He is one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL already. I almost put him in the elite tier when I did my quarterback tiers. So, that being said, you have a stud quarterback. You want to spend your money now. And when you look at the areas they will spend, I believe it will be mostly on DeMeco Ryans' defense, specifically on DeMeco Ryans' front 7, because DeMeco Ryans is all about the front 7. Look at the 49ers, the linebackers the 49ers have, the defensive line the 49ers have had, with DeMeco Ryans there, and then also just over their tenure. That is what that defense lives and breathes on, is the ability to create pressure with a 4-man rush, is the ability to cover with good linebackers, and they already got a special one, in my opinion. Christian Harris is an excellent cover backer. They need to find the complement linebacker to Christian Harris. I wouldn't be shocked if they spent a lot of money on a linebacker. I'd also not be shocked if they spent a lot of money on a defensive tackle or a defensive end. Those are 2 things that you could look at. Finding the partner for Will Anderson, or just finding a dynamic pass rusher from the inside, maybe Chris Jones. Maybe they go out and make a big-time trade for like Jonathan Allen. But I believe that the Texans are going to try to make a massive move on defense and try to get a big-time playmaker and also probably sign a linebacker to a decent contract. Secondary-wise, I think they're decent. They're in decent shape. So turning over to their depth chart here, I think they're in decent enough shape. Derek Stingley, I think, is just getting started. He had a really good end to last year. Jalen Petrie and Jimmy Ward is a really nice safety combination. It's about finding the other corners that are going to complement Derek Stingley. Steven Nelson actually played decent last year. He's a free agent, as well as Thomas. They're starting nickelback, and Desmond King. So they're probably going to be signing some corners. The question is, are they going to be re-signing Steven Nelson, or are they going to be looking elsewhere for another corner? That being said, they could target this in the draft, and I wouldn't be that surprised, just because, like, corner isn't too crucial to their scheme. They'd like to have good corners, but it's not absolutely make or break. They already have their number one corner set in place in Derek Stingley. So otherwise, it's not like a huge deal. They could probably find a nice number two in free agency to complement Stingley. And then they'll probably look at veterans to fill the nickel position. But I really expect them to spend money on the defensive front and at linebacker. Offense-wise, maybe they go for a running back. Devin Singletary's a free agent. Maybe they'll bring him back for cheap. But there's plenty of running backs like Josh Jacobs, Saquon Barkley, Derrick Henry that might want to play with C.J. Stroud. And the offensive line's already in decent enough shape. A lot of the pieces are rather young or like good players. Laramie Tunzel, Shaq Mason, Titus Howard are solid players. Kenyon Green was a first-round pick in 2022. And Scruggs was a second-round pick. So they probably want to let those guys develop a little bit. Dalton Schultz is a free agent. They'd probably like to have him back. But they've got enough cap space to make all these things happen. Again, looking at the Texans, they're right here. So they got $54 million in cap space. So the Houston Texans are a team to watch out for in free agency. Next up, we've got the Indianapolis Colts. If you guys are enjoying the live stream, don't forget to Gronk Spike the like button, share it with your friends, comment your opinion on my choices for the most interesting teams in free agency and the potential winners of free agency. The Colts are next up, and the Colts are very similar to the Texans. They have a rookie quarterback. So when looking at teams that will be spending in free agency, and this is a team that I almost didn't put on my list, because the Indianapolis Colts are not a team that you think of spending a lot of money in free agency. That is not what Ballard typically does. But they have a rookie quarterback in Anthony Richardson that has a lot of upside, but not a lot of people really know what he is yet. But in order to help get the most out of that young quarterback, you want to spend money. So first of all, they're going to have to re-sign Michael Pittman Jr., their number one wide receiver. Otherwise, they might want to spend some money on a tight end. They might want to bring in a Hunter Henry type of player at tight end. They might want to spend money on a number two receiver. I actually like Josh Downs as the slot receiver. Alec Pierce is a bit hit and miss for me. But the offensive line as well is solid. They could be looking at getting younger at center in the draft. They could be looking at maybe upgrading right guard. Otherwise, they have good enough left tackle, right tackle. Left tackle a little bit worse than right tackle. But otherwise, tight end, I wouldn't be shocked if they went out and got a veteran there. Or wide receiver, wouldn't be shocked if they paired somebody with Michael Pittman. Running back, obviously, they have Jonathan Taylor. Defensively, though, is where I think they're going to spend a majority of their money, specifically in the secondary and maybe defensive tackle. Those are the areas I'd be looking at. I think they're good enough at linebacker, the safety position, the corner position, defensive tackle. So we've talked about already Matt Eberflus's defense. Gus Edwards, not the running back. Gus Bradley, my bad, is the defensive coordinator of the Colts. He plays the classic, mostly Seattle scheme defense. Very big on rushing the quarterback with 4 pass rushers. Rarely blitzes the quarterback. So he needs pass rushers. He needs a 4-man rush. And Ebukam, Buckner, and Pay are a solid 3 out of 4. Obviously, Grover Stewart is a free agent. Will they bring him back? He went through some things off the field, roids, all that sort of stuff, got suspended. So we'll see if they look to upgrade that spot or if they look to bring in another rotation edge rusher with some money. Maybe not a big-time contract, but somebody that can complement them as a pass rusher and just go out there and get after it. Maybe like a Bryce Huff from the Jets or somebody like that. You look at the safety position. Blackman is a free agent. I'm a fan of Nick Cross, but they could also be looking to upgrade that safety position. There's lots of safeties out there. You know, Antoine Winfield, I believe, is out there. Kyle Duggar is a free agent. There's a lot of safeties out there that they could potentially go after if they want one of those. Kenny Moore is probably pretty crucial veteran that you would want to have back in this defense. But otherwise, you're probably looking at upgrading the alternative or the secondary number 2 cornerback spot outside of Juju Brents. You probably want to upgrade that spot on the other side because they were hit and miss in coverage last year in the secondary. So cornerback, get a veteran in there along with all these young players. Safety, re-sign Kenny Moore. But this is a team that has all the makings of a rookie quarterback that can go out there and spend some cash, transform their defense, pair it with a dynamic young quarterback with a great offensive coordinator and great head coach in Shane Steichen, and really do some damage in the AFC South and the AFC in general next year. So I'm looking forward to seeing what the Colts are able to do. The next potential winner / really interesting team is the Baltimore Ravens. And I would categorize the Baltimore Ravens as a team that will dictate free agency and not a winner of free agency. Just to be clear there, I don't think they're necessarily going to be a winner. I don't think so, actually. I think they're just going to dictate free agency. Why? Because they have so many free agents. So they have the second most free agents this year heading into this class of free agents after being the number 1 seed in the AFC last year. And the Baltimore Ravens, Odell Beckham Jr., Devin Duvernay, John Simpson, Kevin Zeitler, J.K. Dobbins, Gus Edwards, Tyler Huntley, Brent Urban, Justin Madubuike, Jadeveon Clowney, Patrick Queen, Kyle Van Noy, Geno Stone, Ronald Darby, Rocky Sin are all free agents. Okay, so they're going to have to pick and choose who they want back. The Ravens are not a team that we mentioned having a lot of cap space. They have $5 million right now in cap space. Obviously, they can do some restructures, some extensions, kind of figure out a way to get more cap space. But Baltimore is going to dictate what's going to happen. Is Madubuike going to come back? What's that contract going to look like? How's that going to set the market at the defensive tackle position? Are they going to go after an edge rusher? Or are they going to try to re-sign a couple different veterans and try to find some diamonds in the rough in August like they did last year with Clowney and Van Noy? How will they try to morph their defense? And who will they make important after Mike McDonald has left? Will they try to re-sign Geno Stone or let him walk because they have Marcus Williams and Kyle Hamilton? Are they going to try to re-sign Kevin Zeitler, or will he leave to potentially, I don't know, a team like the Bengals who could use a guard in their own division, right? So these are questions that I think is really going to play a huge role in free agency. Are they going to try to go after another receiver? Because they've spent so much in draft capital on the receiver position, but really in free agency, they've been rather quiet. Odell was a pretty big signing, but it really ended up being a 1-year contract. So the Baltimore Ravens are a team that I wouldn't categorize as a winner or predict as a winner, but I do think they're going to make a large impact on what takes place in free agency. All right. How are we doing, everybody? We're still live. Gronk spiked the like button. Next up, we've got the Kansas City Chiefs. Kansas City is a team just like Baltimore that I see the same way. I wouldn't categorize them as a winner, but I want to talk about them because they're the Kansas City Chiefs and because obviously they are a tone setter and they have a lot of big name free agents this year. And obviously they just won the Super Bowl, so a lot of people are going to be trying to pick apart their roster and take their players. That's always the case. I mean, I saw it for years with the Patriots. But the Chiefs, they have some big name players. And I mean, you look at their defense, which was by the end of the year, probably the most important unit in the NFL, the reason they won the Super Bowl. You look at their defense, and I'm just going to show it to you because I don't think I can really do it justice. So looking at this defense, look at all the orange. Just look at the defensive front, right? You've got Chris Jones, Derek Nandi, Mike Dana, Willie Gay, Tashawn Wharton, Drew Tranquil, L'Jarius Sneed, Mike Edwards, Deion Bush. All those guys played snaps in the playoffs pretty significantly and pretty significant roles. The Chiefs have $15 million in cap space. But here's the thing. Even if they try to restructure some players, which they'll probably do with Patrick Mahomes this year, most importantly, it's going to be difficult for them to create, enough space just because Chris Jones and L'Jarius Sneed are both going to be huge ticket items this offseason. So they're both going to get huge money. So they're probably going to have to choose which one do they want, Chris Jones, L'Jarius Sneed. Otherwise, they're going to have to pick or choose, do they want Drew Tranquil or Willie Gay? They're probably only going to get one because they still have Leo Chanel and they have Nick Bolton at linebacker. They're probably not going to have all four of these guys. They're probably going to have to find a role-playing linebacker somewhere else. It was a luxury to have all these linebackers on the same defense this year. It's probably not a big deal that Wharton or Nandi end up leaving because honestly, they're just run stuffers. And really, Mike Pennell ended up playing a big role for them near the end of the year. But overall, though, Mike Dana could be a key loss. I could see him being picked up by a team and being given a lot of money that maybe he deserves or maybe he gets because he's a Super Bowl champion. And then you also have to talk about left tackle and then also the discussion of, well, they still need a receiver. So there's all those questions with the Super Bowl champs right now that they really have to discuss. So I think that they're going to dictate free agency. Who do they decide to sign, Sneed or Jones? Who do they make the priority? And how does that impact who ends up leaving and who ends up signing Chris Jones or L'Jarius Sneed? Which linebacker do they let go of? Does Mike Dana go elsewhere? What do they do at left tackle? Do they spend money on left tackle after that was a weakness for them last year? Or do they prioritize receiver? Because obviously any receiver going to the Chiefs will make headlines. So the Chiefs are a team that they might not be spending a lot of money, but they'll be making a lot of internal decisions that are going to really play a large role in what happens in free agency. Next, the New York Jets. The New York Jets I have as the team in the thumbnail. And the reason I have the New York Jets as the thumbnail and Aaron Rodgers as the thumbnail is this is a team that has to spend. This is a team that has to go all in. They have no choice. They have absolutely no choice. They have tied themselves to Aaron Rodgers. They have tied themselves to this predicament. And you look at this team, they have a very strong defense. They have a few free agents that we'll talk about on defense that are pretty big and could go elsewhere this offseason. But they also have massive needs on offense to support Aaron Rodgers. And they've put a lot of hope into Aaron Rodgers. He's coming back from an Achilles injury. They're probably going to have to go out and sign some protection for Aaron Rodgers and some receivers for Aaron Rodgers. And yet, here's the thing, right? They don't have a lot of cap space. We already talked about it. The Jets have $1 million right now with no restructures or anything in cap space. So they're going to have to configure some contracts, move some money into this season, move some money into the future with some of their contracts. I'm not sure what they're going to do here. But they're going to have to find a way to make this a Super Bowl / playoff capable team without having a lot of money. Because you look at this roster and maybe they believe it's already there already. Personally, you look at this offense, specifically the offensive line, there's no way you're beating the teams in the AFC with a lackluster center position, a lackluster just left side. Laken Tomlinson has regressed mightily. He is an old player at this point, and maybe that's some money they can move off of. The right side looks decent on paper. Elijah Vera Tucker is a very good player. Can't really stay healthy. Joe Tipman is a second-round pick from last year. He's actually more of a center, so maybe they move him to center, sign a right guard. Maybe they like Max Mitchell to play a starting role. I'm not sure. He played quite a bit last year. But Mekhi Becton is a free agent at left tackle. That's the blind side of Aaron Rodgers, an old quarterback that can't really move. They're going to have to go spend money on that position. Maybe it's David Bakhtiari. Well, if you sign David Bakhtiari to $10 million a year or $15 million a year, what's that going to do to the rest of your team? How are you going to have to manufacture that? And then you talk about wide receiver. Well, I know you love Allen Lazard, but the guy's not even number 2 on your depth chart here. He's pretty stinky. So are you going to go in the second round and draft a receiver to complement Garrett Wilson? Because you're not going to win a Super Bowl. You're not going to win the AFC East. You're not even going to make the playoffs if your only competent receiver is Garrett Wilson. And that's it. So, yeah, you have Breece Hall. He's really good, but they're going to have to figure things out. And now my screen, I don't know what just happened there, is glitching. But the defense, you're probably going to lose a couple of key pieces. Quentin Jefferson played a starting role at D tackle, although I do believe he's replaceable. Al Woods is a veteran. Solomon Thomas, a veteran. Just some depth that they may end up losing. Bryce Huff was a really good player for them. I already brought him up, potentially signing with the Colts. He's going to leave because he's going to get too much money. They're not going to be able to get him back. But the good thing about the Jets is they have Michael Clemens. They have Will McDonald. They have Jermaine Johnson. Those guys are good at edge. I'm not worried about that position. I'm more so worried about them, losing some depth on defense if they see some injuries. And then safety, where they've got their 2 starters, Jordan Whitehead and Chuck Clark, he was injured last year, are free agents. So Jordan Whitehead, they really want to have back because he was really good for them last year. Chuck Clark, I don't know what they'll decide to do there. But corner, they're already good enough. They're really good. So it's just going to be tough for the Jets. But they're going to have to spend. They're going to have to win free agency. Because like I've just described, if they don't win free agency, they're not going to be the team that they set out to be when they made the Aaron Rodgers trade. They've already wasted a season because of the unfortunate injury, and now they're going to have to make up for it by going all in this free agency period and trying to make some moves in the draft. So the Jets have to be a winner or else it's a failure. And the final team I want to end up on, and this is why I made them last, is the New England Patriots, because they're my team. And the Patriots have a case for being a major winner in free agency. And they're extremely compelling because this is the first year with a no Belichick, right? This is a non-Belichick ran front office for the first time in 20 years. This is a Belichick-less coaching staff. This is now Gerard Mayo's show. This is Elliott Wolf and company running the show. This is a team that is likely going after quarterbacks. This is a team that's going after tackle. This is a team that's going after receiver. This is a team that's going to go after high-ticket, high-priced free agents, and you would think some very impactful offensive positions that could turn their team around. So New England is going to have the opportunity to make a splash because New England, sharing my screen, has $69 million in cap, and that doesn't even include the possibility that they could cut J.C. Jackson and have the most cap space in the NFL entering free agency. It wasn't that long ago that we saw them become the biggest spender in 2021's free agency, but the thing about that free agency, it wasn't nearly as loaded as this free agency, specifically at the positions that they need the most: wide receiver, tight end, tackle, etc. So you look at New England's roster, and this is what I've been really preaching about the Patriots, is the fact that they have defense. You look at the defense. The front seven is good, right? You've got Matt Judon is their centerpiece who didn't play last year. They'll have to make a decision on his future, but he's signed. Christian Barmore's a stud. Devon Godchaux's a really good run stuffer. They were the number 1 run defense in football last year. Keon White looks to be really impressive. Dietrich Wise is an awesome role player. Anthony Jennings is a player that I think they'd like to re-sign, but they're probably going to let Josh Uche walk. He's not really the greatest fit for their system, but he'll probably be good elsewhere, so keep that in mind for other teams out there. I'd like them to re-sign Mack Wilson. We're going to go over this when I do a Patriots-specific video. But the point is, they have their defense settled. Like, please let Miles Bryant leave. Like, that doesn't matter. Jalen Mills might leave. That's fine. Josh Uche might leave. That's fine. I'd like them to re-sign Jennings and Kyle Duggar. Other than that, it is what it is. You have $70 million in cap space. Now we can just focus on offense. Kendrick Bourne, do we want him back? That's a question. Right, Demario Douglas is the only receiver you can really count on of being a guy for you next year. Because Devontae Parker ain't any good. Tyquan Thornton, he's still young. We'll see what happens, but he's not really any good. Juju's got knee issues. I don't really know. Hopefully he can be better next year. You're going to have to sign tackle. So Mike Onwenu, are you going to re-sign him? Hopefully, but I'm not sure. Then you've got to look at left tackle. Okay, there's guys on the market we can go after. Do we want Hunter Henry back at tight end? It doesn't feel like Mike Gesicki would be back. Pharaoh Brown, I'd like to re-sign to a one-year deal again. Maybe we want to bring in a secondary running back to help out Ramondre Stevenson, more explosive option than Ezekiel Elliott. Do we want to go after a number one receiver? Do we want to go after a tight end? So all those questions, but the thing is, guys, what makes them a potential winner? They really just have one side of the ball they have to focus on. They have very few but important needs. They just so happen to be 3 out of the 5 most important positions of football, which makes it very sexy to talk about. But also, they have a ton of cap space. They have a new regime that's exciting, that's different. It's going to bring, I think, aggression to this offseason. Robert Kraft is angry. He's having to watch his Dynasty documentary and be angry about not winning currently. So there's a lot of reasons to expect New England to make some noise in free agency, which I'll discuss further at another time. But those are the teams that I think are going to be big-time players in free agency. Those are the teams that will be the most interesting in free agency. And those are the teams that could be winners in free agency. Let me know what you thought of this video. Gronk spiked the like button. Appreciate everybody who did tune in live. And don't forget to subscribe for more NFL free agency content just like this. It's Mitch. We'll see you back here soon for more NFL offseason content. Peace.